What's up, everybody? It's your man Ant Walker here for the Walkout Network, and welcome to the Walk of Shame for UFC Nashville. Apologize first and foremost for not doing this immediately after the fight. Duties as a husband had to supersede anything for you savages out there, so had to go take the lady to a movie. We went to see Us. It was fantastic, and very open to talk about that as well if you get bored at all with what happened the fights last night. But let's go ahead and get started here because we do have a little bit to unpack. I don't really want to go over the entire event. There wasn't, I mean, outside of some key fights, it wasn't really a whole lot to talk about necessarily. And not to say that the action was bad. The action was pretty good, I thought. I was entertained by it. But you know, let's just stick with what's relevant to title pictures. Let's stick with what was the most entertaining, and that's a much shorter list. Shout out to the homie Fugati, who's in the chat already. What's going on, man? All right, so first and foremost, let me go ahead and crack this beer open because it might be 10 a.m. on the West Coast, but I'm a grown-ass man, and nobody can stop me. Plus, my wife ain't home right now, so I can get away with it. But anyway, let's go ahead and start unpacking this because Anthony Pettis knocking out Wonderboy Thompson in the second round, I don't think that's something that anyone anticipated. I certainly did not. I had no clue that this was going to happen. So I did a lot of media work last week leading up to this fight. So I appeared on Mixed Combat Radio with my man Matt Hunter and Fugati. I appeared on Collider Sports MMA Takeover with the homie Dennis, and also The Trenches, my regular live chat with Jason Burgos for SureDog.com. And we, like, everyone was in agreement. Everybody that I spoke with that is a fan of this sport, that is a media member of this sport, all thought that Wonderboy Thompson was going to be able to pick apart Anthony Pettis. I mean, you figure with the clear size difference, you know, Wonderboy being a rather tall and lanky guy at 170, and Pettis just being kind of an average build for 155, you thought, okay, with their similar striking backgrounds, yeah, maybe we can have Wonderboy stay to the outside, throw those long side kicks out, and really be able to disrupt Pettis trying to close that distance, because quite frankly, that was the only way he was going to win that fight, is by closing the distance. You're not going to beat the taller guy at range necessarily. I mean, unless you're talking about someone who doesn't use their range properly, like a Stefan Struve, like a James Vick, you may not have any other path to victory other than to be on the inside and make things a little uglier. And I thought Pettis was attempting to do that. At least I thought that was going to be the game plan. He was going to have to come in. And he was doing that initially, but he was eating a lot of punishment. I mean, it looked like Wonderboy broke his nose, and he just, you know, but Pettis, who does have pretty bad footwork in general, he kept trying to walk down Thompson, but you know, with the flaws in his footwork, he wasn't able to cut off any angles and really box him in to a point where he would force that more brawling or boxing style. And that really, he had to do something interesting in order to get that distance close to land that kill shot. And we kind of forget, after RDA decimated Pettis at UFC 185, after he's alternated wins and losses, after the 3-fight losing streak that started with the RDA fight, we forget that Anthony Pettis is one of the all-time great one-shot kill artists that we've seen in MMA. And while we thought that could happen maybe in somewhere in the back of our minds, I mean, Wonderboy has taken the best shots that Tyron Woodley has to offer. He's taken hard shots from Masvidal, who just floored Darren Till last week. He was able to destroy Johnny Hendricks, who at his height was a one-shot kill artist. Like there's been a clear precedent of Wonderboy being able to handle your punches, and you wouldn't think the lightweight moving up will be able to do it. So Let's see here. Fugati in the chat says Wonderboy had just caught him with a nice kick, and I think that just made him think he had Pettis hurt. And props to Pettis for luring him in. Yeah, exactly. Like, you got to get tricky. You can't just take the classic approach to walking in on a guy like Wonderboy, especially if your deficiency, one of your main deficiencies, is footwork. If your footwork doesn't have some intricacies and you're not able to work angles as much, Pettis moves either this way or this way, and no sort of in between. If you don't have that in between, man, you've got to do something unusual. Yeah, man. So I think that Anthony Pettis was hurt with the broken nose. I think he was getting picked apart, and then that bounce off the cage, man. He became Showtime again. That bounce off the cage into a Superman punch is just something you wouldn't expect. Like, that's not a typical attack. That's not something that you necessarily can game plan for. We remember, of course, the infamous Showtime kick. That's not something you see in a training camp. That's not something that your training partners are necessarily going to be emulating, because how many opportunities are you going to have to attempt something like that? So yeah, that's something to consider. But I really don't know where this leaves Wonderboy, and we'll definitely we have a lot to talk about with Pettis. So let's kind of get the Wonderboy conversation out the way first. You think, at 36 years old, he has failed in 2 attempts to get the title. Of course, with Tyron Woodley now being dethroned, that world would have opened up for him had he been able to get past Anthony Pettis, as we, for the most part, anticipated. But I need to make sure that we recognize that only one of the Sherdog staffers picked Anthony Pettis to win, and I believe that Sherdog staffer was Eric Stinton. So follow him on Twitter at Tombstone Stint. Excellent right there. All right, so as for Wonderboy, let's see, depending on how far he drops, may have the Edwards fight, right? And I think that's a reasonable fight. That's a reasonable drop. Edwards is, let me double check to see his exact ranking, but that is kind of the area you would expect him to be in. Yeah, because he's just in the top 10 now. He's at number 10. Maybe I say put him up against Robbie Lawler. I think the Robbie Lawler fight makes a lot of sense, and that was a matchup that Wonderboy wanted quite some time ago. I mean, we can remember back to when Woodley dethroned Lawler, and he taunted him by saying, "Hey, you wanted to fight Robbie Lawler, so now you can fight Robbie Lawler and not fight me for the belt." I think, why not pull the trigger on the Robbie Lawler fight? I mean, of course, if you guys have been listening to most of what I've been doing as far as fight analysis and everything, I'm not for the Askren Lawler rematch. I don't really want to see that. So Lawler versus Wonderboy, I think, is an acceptable direction to go in. Why not? I think those styles would be a very, very interesting fit. It would be an exciting fight for the most part. I think the best of both of them could possibly shine. But man, if you are Stephen Thompson facing a power punch, even if you fight Edwards, so Edwards hits very hard as well, you fight guys who are power strikers, man. If his chin is unable to handle an Anthony Pettis knockout, or Anthony Pettis Superman punch, maybe his chin is declining. I don't want to go too far down that train, because I think there are a couple of factors to consider in that. First, Wonderboy was very, very well off winning that fight. He was coasting. I think he really kind of went in cruise control. And when you're in cruise control, your senses aren't necessarily as alert. You're not necessarily waiting for that game changer of a strike to land. At that point, I think it was just maintenance. It's just, okay, I just stay doing what I'm doing, and I should win this fight. And maybe the finish opportunity opens, maybe it doesn't. But either way, W's all for me. I think that's what he was thinking. And when you think like that, man, your mind is not necessarily geared up for anything. When you're fighting a Tyron Woodley or you're fighting a Johnny Hendricks, you are very, very well aware that at any moment this person can put your lights clean out because they have so much power, so much power. See, Pettis, his one-shot kills haven't necessarily been power. It's been more about just that right opportunity, just that flash moment. So if you have essentially nullified everything that the other man has done, you're not necessarily mentally ready for that flash moment. I think that's really what happened there. So I think if you put him up against a Robbie Lawler, you put him up against a Leon Edwards, perhaps, at that moment, we see how he can handle that. We see how his chin holds up. But at 36 years old, I mean, you're definitely on the wrong side of a career resurgence, especially at welterweight. There's one thing if we're talking about a heavyweight. Yeah, 36, you're damn near a child. The way the heavyweight division seems to have every star of yesteryear still relevant. But at welterweight, it's not quite like that. So I'm really curious what they do with him next. And yeah, man, this throws a huge monkey wrench in a lot of plans that I think people had in the UFC, in the organization of what to do next. Because Woodley losing that belt just blows this division wide open. And Wonderboy is definitely a guy that I think they would really be very happy about pushing back in the forefront. Hence, what is this? I think his second straight main event. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about what's next for Anthony Pettis. So got a suggestion already in the chat about Jorge Masvidal. I am totally okay with Anthony Pettis fighting Jorge Masvidal, but I think this really depends on what Anthony Pettis wants to do. What version of Anthony Pettis are we going to see? Because he was very non-committal about sticking around at welterweight, and understandably, because style-wise, it's really not a lot of guys that make total sense for him to fight from just that pure style perspective. So I'm going to pull up the rankings at welterweight one more time. And so you look at this, you got to put him in the top 10 at this point for sleeping number 3 ranked Wonderboy. So RDA, we've seen that fight before. No, that's a fight he wants back. We've seen that before, but I kind of think it goes the same way. Ben Askren, training partner, and a horrible style matchup for him if Askren were to get a hold of him. Darren Till, there could be something there. I mean, that size difference is nuts, but there could be something there. Ponzinibbio, yeah, I'm not against that. Robbie Lawler, of course, I'm not against that as well. Damian Mai's horrible style matchup. Leon Edwards, I think, would give him a tough time as well. Maybe there's a Neil Magny out there, but Neil Magny, I mean, now we're starting to talk too low in this division, because when you knock out the number 3 ranked guy, I'm sorry, you should not be shooting for anything in the bottom half of the top 10. Like you just shouldn't be. And quite frankly, unless they're just trying to give you some sort of showcase, the UFC should not be booking you in a fight like that if you were able to do that to the number 3 guy. Yeah, sorry, I just can't back that. But Masvidal would be a very interesting fight, and that's one of the few fights in the division that I think, from a style perspective, could make sense for him. That Masvidal, while he's shown himself capable of out wrestling and out grappling you and out positioning you and nullifying submissions and whatnot, as he was able to come just this close to beating Damian Maia when Damian Maia was just slaughtering everyone before him, leading up to his title shot. I mean, you can goad Masvidal into a fight. You can goad him into that. Like you can pick at him and taunt him or something and make him want to just knock your head off. And that will play very well into Anthony Pettis' style. And then also there's the factor of size, because Masvidal is a guy who was at 155 and went up and spent the majority of his career there. So that fight does make a lot of sense. And I think this is for, if you are Jorge Masvidal, that's a fight you want. That is definitely a fight you want. That's a winnable fight. I think he can approach that from the smart game plan aspect and do what his street fighting instincts would speak against, and that's fighting the smart fight. That's using strategy in order to beat Anthony Pettis. But if you are Anthony Pettis, man, I mean, lightweight is still wide open. Lightweight is all about chaos. And quite frankly, there are a lot of guys that he has not fought yet. Conor McGregor still doesn't have an opponent. Are you telling me you don't want to see Anthony Pettis versus Conor McGregor? If you are saying that, please get all the way the fuck up out of here. That's crazy. I would sign me up. The winner of, I mean, say Dustin Poirier wins against Max Holloway. Why not? Why not see that fight? I think the Max Holloway fight probably goes about the same, but maybe enough time and distance between those fights to where, hey, I'm okay with the rematch. The winner of Cowboy and Ally Aquinta, of course, he's already beaten Cowboy, but I'm sure he'd run that back. I'm sure both of them would run that back, and that's been a long time since that fight. The winner of Gaethje and Barboza, which he has, I know he's got a loss against Barboza. I still would love to see that fight again, but Justin Gaethje, whew, man, Gaethje versus Pettis. Oh man, that just tugs at my heartstrings right there. I mean, you could put him up against a Paul Felder and you could get something. Like, there are so many options now with Anthony Pettis. I really would have loved to see him versus Kevin Lee, but of course, Kevin Lee and RDA have been booked. Maybe the winner of that, whether it be at 155 or 170. There's just too many things now that we can anticipate for Anthony Pettis, and how much was it makes that experiment at 145 look real crazy now, doesn't it? Doesn't that look really insane that the guy who was struggling to make 145 now just knocked out one of the premier names at welterweight? Makes you think, man, why are these guys cutting weight? Why? What is the purpose here? Why are we doing this to ourselves? I don't get it. But another example of what could happen if you just spend some time in the weight room instead of the sauna. So there's that. I'm really excited about what's next for Anthony Pettis. Not just because he has perhaps the best first name known to man. He's an exciting fighter, and he matches up very well with some guys in both divisions. We can see some very, very exciting things ahead. So definitely any more questions you got about that, drop them in the chat, and we'll revisit. But let's briefly touch on the Curtis Blaydes versus Justin Willis co-main event. That kind of went exactly the way I thought. I mean, I thought Blaydes would be able to get the finish, but, I mean, he didn't really have to. I mean, he did everything but finish Justin Willis, like just total domination from start to finish. And you really, if you are fighting Curtis Blaydes and your takedown defense is not top notch, you are having a rough evening. You are having a horrible time. And it's not really a whole lot to talk about in this matchup, but damn, like, Curtis Blaydes has only lost to Francis Ngannou twice. So let's not. I think in mixed martial arts we're too quick to just throw someone away if their last fight was a loss. We're very quick to just dismiss you and you're nothing. I don't think we're as bad as boxing can get with that, but we're way too quick in MMA because there's so many different ways to lose and so many more X factors than you'll find in boxing that I think a more reasonable approach should be had. Curtis Blaydes is absolutely one of the elites at heavyweight. And Francis Ngannou having 2 wins over him doesn't change that. Doesn't change that one bit. So in the first Ngannou fight, of course, he was losing on the scorecards, if my memory has served me correct. But a doctor stoppage was that for a cut. Like, that's what stopped the fight. It wasn't that he was separated from his consciousness. Of course, in the rematch, he was separated from his consciousness. But I don't think we saw enough of that fight to see what Curtis Blaydes could offer. You know, I'm very curious to see what a third fight between those two would look like. I don't think it's the right time to book that, of course, but I think we'll see that at some point. because both of these guys are just hovering at that great spot. They're both hovering there, and they will clash. They will clash at some point. So there's a reason why Daniel Cormier was not too fond of fighting Curtis Blades before the Ngannou fight happened and knocked him out of title contention. There's a reason why. Like that's a bad style matchup for a lot of people. If you can't get Curtis Blades down, or if Curtis Blades can get you down, you are having a tough time. Okay, and that's just it. The man hits hard. His striking has improved leaps and bounds. Just what he's able to do from a footwork standpoint, from a shot selection standpoint, just defensively, like he is so much better than he was when we first saw him in the UFC. He's growing exponentially, I think. And as far as what's next for him, I think there's a lot to be had there at heavyweight for him. So let's take a look at what we got for heavyweight for Curtis Blades now. Hey, I'm not mad at if Volkov gets past Overeem. I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at Blades fighting JDS. Well, not mad at that at all. Like I'm not even mad about Derek Lewis, although Derek Lewis is coming off of a loss, and he does have knee surgery that's gonna get him sidelined to the end of the year. But say Blades wants to take some time off, hey, maybe him and Derek Lewis can welcome each other back. The homie Jay Sherdog dropped a suggestion that I think definitely deserves me to revisit this for just a moment. First of all, he says Wonderboy versus Gunnar Nelson would be a very, very good fight. Yes, I like that a lot. That'd be an interesting like karate style matchup. Also, he says Pettis versus Aldo for Aldo's final fight. Yeah, why not? At this point, just have fun with it, man. If Aldo is checking out soon, and Pettis and Aldo wanted to fight each other before, they were booked to fight each other several years back before Pettis was quote unquote injured before he had the title opportunity against Benson Henderson to win the belt in his hometown of Milwaukee. So yeah, I'm all for that. Very good suggestions from my man Jay. But as far as Curtis Blades and Justin Willis goes, Curtis Blades, man, you compare him up with a couple different guys, and we can see something good. He's also at kind of a weird spot where you can't throw him in against Ngannou. You don't want to do that again, and for Ngannou, it just wouldn't make any sense. But he's got some options there. Derek Lewis being one of them if he wants to take a break. JDS, if say Ngannou gets Cormier, give JDS to Blades and let it play out that way. That sounds like a good direction to go in. All right, so let's see. What is the next fight on the card? Stipe. Yeah, Stipe. Wow. How the hell I forget about Stipe, man? Forgot about Stipe. Stipe ain't fighting right now. Shit. But Stipe, yes, Stipe makes perfect sense. Thank you for that suggestion as well. So let's take a look at the next fight down on the card. Makdessi versus Jesus Pinedo. Let's not talk about that. Hard pass. But I am glad that Makdessi won simply because that was my pick. And aside from the Pettis upset, clean sweep for me last night. Juicy Formiga versus Davison Figueiredo. I like this was Formiga put on a very, very, very strong performance. And it's just a shame that we have this chaos at flyweight because that is a performance that earns you a title shot. Yeah, he didn't get the finish, man, but he shut down the superior athlete. He was able to use technical know-how and veteran savvy to get a win against a guy who is extraordinarily dangerous, who was until last night undefeated. I mean, Juicy Formiga was able to just outsmart him. Figueiredo throwing those big bombs and going in for the takedowns and level changes, and once he got on the ground, just some crafty stuff he did. I mean, Juicy Formiga has always he's been around that greatness aspect for so long now. I mean, this is a guy that was fighting Ian McCall back when Ian McCall was the best flyweight in the world years and years ago. So I'm really high on what Formiga has to offer. But it's just a shame that, and now I haven't read these reports. I just saw something pop up on my Twitter timeline saying that Dana White was confirming that they're trying to make Cejudo versus Moraes for the bantamweight title. But dude, man, well, okay, is this it? So anybody in the chat, if you can let me know, correct me if I'm wrong. Is Formiga versus Benavidez 2 happening? Is that official now? And Cejudo versus Moraes, are these confirmed? Because if they are confirmed, hey, that gives some hope to flyweight, especially if Moraes beats Cejudo. Oh man, flyweight's got to stick around. Flyweight simply just has to. But Jussier Formiga is a guy that should be fighting for a title. It's just that plain and simple. I think this extends his win streak to 3, and he is the one who derailed Sergio Pettis at UFC 229, and I know they were eyeing Sergio Pettis for big things because of the name, because of his fight style, because of his looks. Like, he was a guy that I think the UFC really wanted to do something with. Formiga shut that down. I think if Formiga lost that fight against Sergio Pettis, I don't think there would have been the rush to put Cejudo versus Dillashaw together in the first place, because then you would have had a marketable challenger just sitting there at that time. And I think that's something that we kind of lose in translation. So Formiga, man, he's doing his best to save that division. He is doing his best to save that division. More power to him. Beautiful, beautiful performance there. All right, so let's move down the line here on the next fight on the card. Luis Pena versus Steven Peterson. Pena, man, did not make weight. I don't think he belongs trying to make 145. Seeing how huge this dude is in person, we see like 6'3", and a guy who's 6'3" fighting at 145 just sounds ridiculous. Oh, okay. Jay just got back to me on the flyweight news. Dana said last night on the post fight that those are the fights on the same card in case something happens. Someone can step up. All right, that's great news. That's great news. There is some hope for flyweight. At the very least, either Formiga or Benavidez might have the opportunity to carry on at bantamweight. And keep in mind, Benavidez was a title challenger at bantamweight in the WEC years and years ago. So there is that. All right, so with Luis Pena and Jesus Pinedo, I'm not Jesus Pinedo, sorry, Steven Peterson. Pena really just kind of had his way with it, and I think Peterson had some moments of success, but Pena, man, his length is just a lot to deal with. His length opens up so many opportunities that would not be there. Like when they were on the fence, whenever they were clinch grappling against the fence, and forgive me for not knowing all the technical terms of this. I'm actually just started training jiu-jitsu in a gi now, so I'll have more technical jiu-jitsu analysis as I learn more. But anyway, he was able to kind of grab a leg and do things that were disrupt what Peterson was trying to do against the fence and trying to drag his hips away and put him down. He was able to stifle that simply because his arms were long enough to reach in places that the average size guy is not going to reach in. I mean, if Luis Pena can make a 145 safely, I get why he wants to fight there, but I just have my doubts on him making it safely there. Now, forgive me for not checking out any post-fight interviews and whatnot, because, hey, I was at the movies, and yeah, I'd just rather do that than watch post-fight stuff all the time. But anyway, if he said, hey, he was sick in camp or had some sort of injury and that prevented him from cutting the weight properly, all right, cool. Give it another crack. But man, I just don't like the idea of someone who is 6'3" fighting at 145, and seeing him in person is just like, Jesus, how does he make 155? And you're going to cut 10 more pounds from there? That is nuts. That is absolutely nuts. But as we've seen over and over again, the guy who fails his weight cut kind of wins the fight more times than not. And in this case, hey, guess it was worth it. That 30% of his purse that he lost, I guess it was worth it because, hey, we're talking about him in a positive light. In several months or so, or a year or whatever, and we're probably going to forget that he missed weight. Excuse me. We're going to see a W on his record, and that's kind of all that's going to matter. But Pena, man, was so. I wanted to see, and I was yelling this at the TV right before Daniel Cormier is saying this on the commentary, and of course Daniel Cormier, being one of his mentors at AKA, had a very emotional, invested interest in this fight, and he was calling for him to throw more kicks. And I thought that was a spot on analysis right there. I was yelling at the TV, I want to see more kicks because of that length, man. He could kick you from across the damn cage, and there's literally nothing you could do about it. Like at that point, Peterson was just getting eaten up on the feet. He was getting picked apart, and those uppercuts where, I mean, to have a guy with long arms like that uppercutting, especially that lead uppercut, and how it can just sneak under the guard from so far away. I mean, I think Pena was using his length to expert lengths. It was amazing what he was able to do. And you think how new this guy is in his career. Like, his UFC tenure has been extraordinarily short. I mean, this was like his seventh fight, I believe. His seventh professional fight, and he's using his length that effectively. This man is very, very dangerous, and I think whether he somehow can continue the cut to 145 and make it there fine, or he goes back up to 155 and stays there, he still has such massive length and such good skill. He will be fine regardless, and I think we have some good things to anticipate from him. All right, so the first card to start off the first fight to start off the main card, Macy Barber versus JJ Aldrich. I mean, Macy Barber remains undefeated, but I think it's very clear we need to pump the brakes. Every time there is a young lady who emerges in the UFC who is fits their traditional standards of beauty, who shows themselves to be pretty good at this fighting thing, the marketing machine gets moving, and the promotional muscle just goes right behind them and pushes them as hard as they possibly can. And I think we need to pump the brakes on Macy Barber. She showed some serious deficiencies in her game, but at 20 years old, these are things that can be fixed. So there's no need to rush her. Let's develop Macy Barber because she really can be a force. I mean, clearly she's got the power. When she is moving forward, she became very difficult for Aldrich to handle, and Aldrich has proven herself to be a very good striker. So to be able to walk down JJ Aldrich, especially after the beating that she endured in that first round, Aldrich beat the brakes off of her in round one because Barber was backing up too much. She was using too much head movement. Of course, head movement is a good thing, but if it's something you rely on too much in MMA, you will get messed up at times. I know this from personal experience because this is a frequent criticism of mine from my current coach now. It's just like, hey, stop trying to head movement so much. You're getting kicked in the legs. You're getting, you kind of stifle yourself if all you rely on is the head movement, as good as it can be in spots. And she was doing that way too much. She was content to back up in a straight line and just move her head around, and she's getting picked apart. And also, her head movement wasn't timed in a way that can be confusing. She kind of stayed with the same patterns, and you stay with that same pattern, someone will catch your timing. They will figure it out. They will start throwing things to anticipate where your head's moving, and they'll feint something and throw something else to capitalize on the way your body and your head are swaying back and forth. So Macy Barber did show resiliency. She did show toughness and heart and grit and the ability to absorb some punishment and then give it right back. And those are all great things to see in someone at her age. Those are great things to see. Those are great building blocks. But they're building blocks. That means you're still under construction. That means we do not want to see Macy Barber versus Valentina Shevchenko anytime soon. You know, that would be highly, highly irresponsible. Highly irresponsible. I mean, with the flyweight division for Macy Barber, you gotta aim low. I mean, I honestly wouldn't be too keen on throwing her in a top 15 match at this point. I just wouldn't want to do it because it just seems like all those ladies would be a little bit too much for her right now. I say give her like 2 more fights outside of the top 15, and if she passed those tests, and if some of those holes close up, hey, then we start talking about top 15. Then we can start putting together a contender run. But I don't like the constant rush to put someone in the spotlight because, hey, they look good on camera. You know, that's looking good on camera does not mean you can fight your way there. Does not mean that you belong with the elites just yet. I think she will be. She's just not there yet. And there's no shame in that. 20 years old. Like, let the girl develop. Let the young lady develop. Let her come into her own as a martial artist. And then we can see her contend against the Shevchenkos of the world, or some of the other names that, like a Liz Carmouche, or someone else who means something at flyweight. So pump the brakes on Macy Barber. All right, so for the prelims, I don't want to get into this a whole lot. Let me go ahead and scroll through these matchups and see what stands out to me. All right, okay, we got to talk about Bryce Mitchell and Bobby Muffet. I had Bobby Muffet winning that fight 29-28, and of course the judges saw it for Bryce Mitchell. I'm not mad at that. That was a very close fight. That second round was very close. If I'm remembering that correctly, was it the second round that was really close? Let me check these notes here. I have my notes kind of suck ass. But yeah, I think it was the second round that was pretty close between it. That was kind of a swing round. And Bryce Mitchell, man, that dude he's just so exciting to watch. Like, I love watching a guy who thrives in chaos. Like, Bryce Mitchell's style is all about anarchy. It's all about just doing something that just isn't necessarily conventional to get to something conventional. I love watching that. It reminds me a lot of like a Carlos Condit, where you're like creating scrambles. You have these awkward stand switches. You have these unusual combos that kind of test your dexterity. I love to see that because it is so unconventional. It's so unpredictable to watch. And for a guy who says he doesn't have a game plan, I mean, like, how do you predict what he's going to do if he doesn't know what he's going to do? Of course, the higher up you get, you might want to start game planning at least somewhat. You might want to keep certain things in mind, or at least have your coaches kind of steer you in that direction, whether you're the one watching the fight film or not, doesn't matter. But your guidance in camp should have something toward specific opponents as you fight on such a high level, and as that level gets to the elite status. But what we saw, man, Bryce Mitchell, man, that is an entertaining dude, and I love that a guy that's so new, that's so green as far as being in the UFC is concerned, and being a guy that we're looking to, that he just is calling out Reebok. He's just saying, "Hey, Reebok, like, what are you doing here? Can we get this man?" You know, in his UFC debut, in his UFC proper debut, this man is demanding camouflage Reebok shorts. Just give the man. Come on, Reebok. Like, yeah, we get it. You guys got the exclusive deal for UFC apparel, but have some fun with it. Shit, man. This whole thing was supposed to be about customization. This whole thing that Reebok and the UFC were talking about was customization and the fighters, and we're gonna make this for the fighters. It's gonna be personalized. Give the man some damn camouflage shorts, okay? At the very least, it just improves the look of what you're doing here. Let these guys stand out. And you gotta applaud Bryce Mitchell for standing out, for taking his time on the mic to stand out. All right, he's obviously a very interesting personality. I mean, he walked out to a song from Lil White, who is a a 3-6 Mafia affiliate that very few people outside of deep rap culture know who he is. I mean, that's such a deep cut. Like the dude is interesting. His nickname is Thug Nasty, for crying out loud. And he's yelling about how he wants steak. He's yelling in the mic about taking his mom to eat steak. I mean, he's just a different dude. He's a really different dude, and I love it. I love it, and I want to see more. Of course, the decision, I would have given it to Bobby Muffin, but a fight that close, you can't be but so mad. And I've said it on this very channel many times. I've said it on Sure Dog Radio. Said it on pretty much every platform that I've ever been able to get on. Is that, hey, we use the word robbery too much. I don't want to hear a damn word about a robbery. That was a very close fight. Excuse me. And man, I'm super trash for sneezing so much this morning. We use the word robbery way too much in MMA, and I don't want to hear that for this fight whatsoever. All right, so let's move on from that. Marlon Vera versus Frankie Sanchez. Marlon Vera just, I mean, he steamrolled him. I don't know what to say. I do have to go back and watch the Jennifer Maia and Alexis Davis fight because I was having all sorts of problems with my stream on ESPN Plus during this fight. It interrupted so many times that I really couldn't watch it in enough detail to give you guys a very thorough analysis of it. But I will say this. From what I remember in that first round, please jump in the chat and kill me in the comments if I'm wrong on this. Man, I thought Maya was getting getting worked in that first round. If I'm remembering that correct, she was getting worked in that first round. Excuse me, Alexis Davis was getting worked in that first round, and then she found herself able to kind of change the range of it. Because if I'm remembering it right, Maya was like boxing her out to start that fight, and it was just landing on her and landing on her and landing on her. And then the table started turning, and Davis was able to manage distance better, start throwing kicks, and then that kind of became the equalizer. So from my broken stream, it looked like Davis pulled away enough momentum in the last two rounds to win it, but that's also I can't jump off a bridge with that. I mean, that's not a hill I'm dying on. I simply just need to rewatch it without the interruptions to the stream. ESPN Plus, please step your game up. Okay, if these pay-per-views are going through ESPN Plus, when this pay-per-view starts and I'm spending my $60, I damn sure don't want to see any shit like this. I damn sure do not want to see a broken stream and be 30 seconds behind on the broadcast because my stream hasn't caught up yet, and also some weird stuff and people getting stalled on the fence and takedown attempts, and then all of a sudden the very next frame, hey, they're on the ground and positions are like, I need to see all this stuff. So ESPN Plus, please step your game up. All right, just step your game up. So homie Jay asks, what's the last fight that I called a robbery? The last fight that I called a robbery. I know I've taken a lot of flack for my Till versus Thompson robbery of the year article, which was something voted upon by Sure Dog staff, by the way. So, hey, point the finger at all of us. I mean, pointing at me solo. I don't give a fuck. It is what it is. Like I don't even care what people think. But anyway, it's. I don't see a lot of robberies necessary. And even that one it didn't feel like a robbery to me in the traditional sense. It felt like a robbery in terms of the system itself, like how we score fights. And that's kind of what I see more than anything else. It's just like these weird interpretations of what cage control is and stuff like how much we value that. I think that's where the robberies really come into play. But the last time I can clearly remember, just off the top of my head, just watching the fight, like, what the hell did they see? Was probably Diego Sanchez and Ross Pearson. Off the top of my head, that's the first thing that comes to mind. Or Ali Quinta and Jorge Masvidal, where I'm just like, what? Like, where I just genuinely did not see that at all. But what I do find are a lot of goofy scorecards, like really goofy scorecards that just don't match the action. So there was one last night that I thought was a horrible scorecard. I want to say it was in the first fight of the night. Let me double check my notes there. Yeah, it was the first fight of the night. Eric Shelton and Jordan Espinosa. Espinosa winning that fight by decision. And there were two 30-27 scorecards. I thought that was silly. I really thought that was silly because I thought Shelton clearly won that last round. My scorecard, I had Espinosa winning 29-28. I'm not mad if you saw it the other way around because that wasn't necessarily the easiest fight to score in the first two rounds. But Shelton very clearly won that third round to me. So anybody coming up with a 30-27 in favor of Espinosa, even though I thought Espinosa won, and that's just crazy talk. That's really crazy talk. And that's what I see more than anything else. I see a goofy ass scorecard where the right guy still happens to win. That's kind of what there was a split decision last week. Oh yeah, Leon Edwards and Gunnar Nelson fight. Like the judge, and I know I yelled about this last week, but the judge that scored that fight for Gunnar Nelson, like, bro, what the fuck was you watching? Like that's I have more moments like that where they read the scorecards and I'm just like perplexed, like what? How did you get that number based on the action? You know, so that's kind of where more of the robberies come into place. That descending scorecard just seems bizarre. But I don't think there are that many just pure robberies like Masvidal Iaquinta or Pearson Sanchez or something like that. All right, so let's move on from there. Where we go? Oh yeah, Angela Hill and Randa Marcos. Man, it always hurts me to see Angela Hill lose, but that's more of a personal thing. Angela Hill is definitely one of the nicest people I've met in mixed martial arts. She's a sweetheart. She's really cool, fun person to be around. But then on top of that, we're from the same area. Like we grew up very close to one another. But I didn't know her growing up, but we grew up in the same area. So, and she went to high school like down the street from the neighborhood I grew up in, interestingly enough. And I'm sure if we sat down and talked more, we probably have a lot of mutual friends. But either way, Angela Hill, man, hard fought loss for her, man. She was not giving up that armbar easy. She was not giving that up at all. All right. And more power to her, man. That's what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to fight it. But Randa Marcos just was too much. It was just too much, man. And I don't know how much the hatred between the two played into this. But Randa Marcos did exactly what she should have done. You don't stand there and try to strike with Angela Hill if you're Randa Marcos, because hey, her striking is just not on the same level. It's just not. Like Angela Hill is very, very good at hitting people. So you don't want to be there if you don't have to. And if you have the grappling chops of Randa Marcos, do that. Take the fight to the ground and finish it there. And I you know, part of me was holding out hope that Hill would be able to survive to the bell. And you see when they were just kind of fighting over the grips, she went in the padlock and Marcos broke it. And then she got another variation of the padlock. And that was very interesting to watch. Like I do enjoy seeing some of those intricacies and those subtleties in grappling exchanges. And I love what was happening there. Now as far as what's next for these two, for Randa Marcos, like, I mean, she came into this fight in the top 15. Maybe you can put her up against a Carla Esparza or a Courtney Casey or something like that. I mean, there are definitely options there. There's women's strawweight is loaded with talent. So I don't think there's any bad matchups you can throw her in there. Of course, there are people that I would favor her. Favor against her and whatnot, but I think there's some good, exciting matchups that you can put together. I wouldn't mind seeing her against Herrick. Yeah, why not? Why not do that, man? Let's check something here. That sounds like a good enough fight for me. Herrick is kind of been on a bit of a run herself. Yeah, and she's got the last loss to Nina Ansaroff and Alexa Grasso, but and man, maybe a rematch against Courtney Casey doesn't sound bad to me. But yeah, my first instinct is Felice Herrig, and that would be a rematch from the Ultimate Fighter season that brought them both into the promotion. So why not? Yeah, book that. Go ahead and book that one. See, for Angela Hill, I don't know. I really don't know what's next for her. We saw her go get booted from the UFC before and go to Invicta and kind of get some business there and win the title and find her way back to the promotion. I mean, maybe that's an option that's on the table, but I mean, it's a 2-fight losing streak. The Courtney Casey fight, debatable on that one. If I'm remembering correctly, I did score that fight for Hill, but this is the first time in a while that I can remember, at least, Angela Hill just definitively losing. I mean, not since like Rose Namajunas choked her out at I think it was UFC 192, and Carla Esparza in the Tough House. But other than that, then Tisha Torres. I think that was a more dominating win as well. But Angela Hill's been able to kind of hang in there even when she loses, and this is one of the rare times where she wasn't. So maybe you know, her going back to Invicta is premature, and it probably is. And I'm sure there are names I'm not thinking of. And if anybody has some suggestions, please, by all means, throw that in the chat. But, oh man, I you know, I just like Angela Hill. What can I say? I like her. She's cool as hell. All right, so let's check out what is next, and we'll rapid fire through the rest of this. Chris Gutierrez and Ryan McDonald. What a savage beatdown. Gutierrez, if he was not a nice person, I'm assuming, McDonald would have been decimated even worse. Gutierrez just didn't turn up a notch. And in fact, in the last round, he really went off the gas pedal and allowed McDonald to kind of have some fleeting moments of success. But by then, he was so beaten down, I don't think anything was going to amount of it. Yeah, man. And Gutierrez, like, pulling guard at the end of that fight, like, really, bro? Like, that made no sense to me whatsoever. Like, McDonald was trying to get this fight to the ground once he realized that he was getting picked apart on the feet so bad. And then in the last minute, you pull guard on the guy when he's in full desperation mode and trying to take your head off. You just got to make better decisions than that, my man. Like, that just did not make any sense to me. But he got the win, a dominating win nonetheless. So we'll briefly touch on, and I did talk about this a little bit already, Jordan Espinosa versus Eric Shelton. Very enjoyable fight, man. Eric Shelton, I definitely can see how a lot of people thought Shelton won. He started trying to get Espinosa's timing with that head movement, like we talked about in the Macy Barber fight. When you're relying on so much head movement and you kind of move in the same pattern, the other guy's gonna catch your timing at some point and start landing some shots on you. So that definitely, the judging was not an easy job for this fight, because Shelton was countering a lot of Espinosa's like feints and head movement and stuff with just basic strikes and kind of ushering him to certain places on the fence. And Espinosa, man, when he was at his best, he was able to keep distance. He was able to bounce in and out and do some things to make Shelton really work for his success. So not mad at that result there. But yeah, so overall, UFC Nashville was a good card. It was entertaining. I enjoyed it. And once again, man, just having these fights start at a little more reasonable time, it's such a life changer. It's such a lifesaver and a game changer to not have my life totally consumed by just watching fights all the time when I'm not at my day job. So definitely enjoyed what was offered. And next week. What's next week? Next week, Philly? Is next week Philly? I'm sorry that I don't know this off the top of my head, man, but it's just so many damn fights. Let's see. We've got Bellator 219 is next week. Oh yeah. So Philly is next week. Edson Barbosa versus Justin Gaethje. So I'm very much looking forward to what's ahead for next Saturday's UFC offering. David Branch also on that card. Josh Emmett versus Michael Johnson sounds really fun. Michelle Waterson and Karolina Kowalkiewicz, also a fun one. Let's see, anything on the undercard that really stands out. Jessica Aguilar, who's a former World Series of Fighting strawweight champion, is fighting Marina Rodriguez. Should be an interesting one. The aforementioned Ross Pearson appearing on the card. Kevin Holland, who is one of the great personalities emerging from mixed martial arts now, is on there as well. Ray Borg, former title challenger at flyweight, but this is going to be a bantamweight fight, so that should be very interesting as well. Definitely a lot to look forward to, and I was just asked what I thought about the movie Us. Us was great. It was fantastic. I love it. I actually have been watching like analysis videos picking it apart, which is why I haven't finished writing my good, bad, and ugly column for SureDog.com, which should go live. I will finish it as soon as this broadcast ends. So expect that to be live on the site sometime tonight. So if we have any more questions in the chat, please drop them before I drop this broadcast. But yeah, Us was dope, man. Definitely would recommend checking that out. And it's actually a really cool movie as far as horror goes. I'm not a big horror fan because I don't find it scary. But this had some elements like it was like genuine terror where it's like you don't know what's going on. So it has it's invoking the fear of the unknown, and that's when you're playing those mind games with the audience. I am all for that. I am all for that, and that is fantastic stuff. So I recommend you all stop watching people punch each other in the face for just a couple hours. Go take your significant other to see Us. Get some popcorn, some cherry Coke. It's good. It's good night. Good night right there. So I'm going to finish this beer. I'm going to finish this column, and I'm going to fix something to eat. So you know what you got to do, everybody. Follow me on Twitter at AntWalkerMMA. Please like and subscribe to the channel. Share it with your friends, man. If you're enjoying what I'm doing here, please share it with your folks, with like-minded individuals. I encourage you all to jump in the chat whenever. I encourage you all to tweet me questions. I encourage you all to interact with me any way you can. I'd love to interact with everyone. So for the Clapback Cartel, it's the crew right there, SureDog.com, and MMA On Point, I am Anthony Walker. So you know what you must do, everyone. I want you to enjoy the weekend, what's left of it. So that means stay beautiful. That means stay positive. And by all means, no matter what, you shall always stay sexy. I will see you when I see you. Peace.